Good afternoon and welcome to Just Parlays with Chris King for Wednesday, October 5th, 2022. As always, I'm your host, talent, handicapper, extraordinaire, whatever you want to call it, Chris King. Welcome you to the show. Got a little bit to talk about today. We've got, of course, the final day of the Major League Baseball regular season. So it'll be fun to watch and see who plays and who doesn't. Of course, the wild card playoffs will start on Friday. So it'll be a pretty boring day for sports tomorrow, unless you're a fan of watching the Colts and Broncos on Thursday Night Football. We've also got one game in college football as Central Florida hosts SMU in that game that was postponed twice last week due to Hurricane Ian. So at least there's midweek football before we get to action later this month and into the month of November, where we'll have football basically on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Plenty of high-scoring games there. In the only game in baseball going on right this second, in Baltimore, it's the Blue Jays leading in the top of the sixth, 4-0 in the first game of a doubleheader. Those two teams were rained out yesterday. So, of course, with nothing at stake for either one of these teams, they said, hey, you know what we should do? We should just play a doubleheader for the hell of it. Starting pitchers that one, Trevor Richards got the start for Toronto. He went a whole inning. Toronto's just going basically bullpen game here in the first contest. Mike Baumann got the start for the Orioles. He was chased in the sixth after giving up a 3-run homer to Moreno. So 4-0 in the sixth. Toronto still batting in the top of the frame. 1 out, nobody on. Keegan Aiken coming on in relief for Baltimore. Should be interesting to see how some of these games unfold because, like I said, you don't know who's going to end up playing. I tried to take that into consideration when I was looking at the lineups for some of these things because only a few teams had their starting lineups up as of early this afternoon. The Angels now have their lineup up, and Trout is in the lineup. For those of you that might be wondering, Ohtani, of course, is in the lineup because he's pitching. No Corey Seager for the Rangers this afternoon. Marcus Semien is playing. Of course, Aaron Judge, after hitting his 62nd home run of the season last night, gets the day off today. However, Anthony Rizzo, among those still in the lineup for the Yankees. Nobody cares about the Pirates lineup, so we won't waste time talking about them. Just scrolling down. Cleveland looks like they're going to run their regular lineup out there. Juan, Rosario, Ramirez at the top of the order for their game against the Royals. Seattle's got their pretty much normal lineup in there. Haniger and Julio Rodriguez. Let's see here. San Diego has Soto back in the lineup. He didn't play yesterday. Machado's in there. Will Myers, Drury. Tampa Bay has, looks like their lineup's in there. Boston's got Devers and Bogarts, Verdugo and J.D. Martinez in a game that means absolutely nothing because we know they're going to be last in the AL East. In Houston, Philadelphia's got Kyle Schwarber back. He rested yesterday. Hoskins is in the lineup. So is Real Muto and Castellanos. Jose Altuve will not play for Houston. Neither will Jeremy Pena, but they've still got Kyle Tucker and Jordan Alvarez and Bregman and those guys in the mix. Just looking down the list, the Twins have Luis Arias in the lineup. The White Sox did not play Jose Abreu or Eloy Jimenez tonight. Atlanta hasn't released their lineup. They're going to have Jackson Stevens on the mound in the finale here against Alicia Hernandez for the Marlins. Nobody to talk about really worthwhile on the Marlins as far as hitting goes. For the Brewers, they're still rolling out their lineup. Christian Yelich is out there. Willie Adams, Rowdy Tellez. The only name I see that's missing is McCutchen. And then in Los Angeles, The Dodgers still going to at least start off the game with Mookie Betts and Trey Turner and Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, Muncy, Turner, then Lux, Bellinger, and Gallo to round up the lineup. So after losing their last two, they're going to at least start the game with their normal lineup in that one. Yo to you too, James. Good to see you. Buddy, how's food coming out? Quick talk about the Yankees on the money line and the Brewers on the money line and a Nerfie in both those games. I like the Nerfies because we called the Nerfie yesterday with Gallen and Lauer in the Brewers Diamondbacks game. It's Kelly and Burns in this one. Not expecting a ton of offense in there. With the Brewers, you never know what you're going to get at the plate because you never know who's going to hit for them or if they're going to hit. I mean, they scored 3 runs yesterday. That was enough to get by, but they were facing Arizona. As far as UCF, I like them tonight. I don't know about the total just because SMU's strength obviously is throwing the ball. We've seen that a lot in the last few years. It's definitely the case again this year with Tanner Mordecai under center. The problem that SMU is going to have is the fact that UCF is good against the pass. I think they're 14th in the country in passing yards allowed per game. They make life tough for opposing teams. And they're going to run the ball down SMU's throats. So you might see unless they're scoring, on 50, 60-yard touchdowns, UCF's going to try and grind some clock in that game. And a lot of things that you see with SMU is they get these high point totals because their defense is so bad and their offense is good. And then they end up falling short of those numbers. You look just on the season so far, and you're looking at SMU has put up point totals of – let me pull it up here. They went over last week against TCU, but that number was 72, and they got to 76. But against Maryland, the total was 74. Against Lamar, the total was 66, and against North Texas was 67. The totals that combined points in those games were 58, 61, and 61. I seen the number has shifted a little bit. It was 63 and a half. It started at 65, I believe. It's back to 63 and a half in a lot of books. It had been down to 62 or 62 and a half at some earlier this morning. I just don't know if we're going to get there because if Central Florida plays their style of football, you have to be concerned about whether we'll get to that point where SMU would have to score probably, 28 points, give or take, to get to that mark. And UCF would have to have 35 plus. SMU is the under's 4-0 in their last 4 on the road. UCF has seen the under go 4-0 in their last 4 after a straight up win. But as far as the side, I definitely like UCF. SMU's gone 0-4-1 in their last 5 trips to Orlando. And, it's tough to have a ton of faith in an SMU team that's so one-dimensional. They can't run the ball very well. And UCF is very good at moving the ball on the ground, averaging better than 5.5 yards a carry this season. They ran the ball all over Georgia Tech in a game where Plumlee did nothing offensively as far as throwing the ball. I think he completed 8 out of 16 passes for 49 yards or something like that. But it makes days like this difficult as far as baseball goes because, like we said, you don't know how long anybody's going to be in the lineup for. In the case of Toronto, they're playing a doubleheader. We might see, 9 different pitchers in each game. Toronto's apparently now has brought in Mitch White in the 6th inning of this game against the Orioles. They haven't announced a starter for game 2 that I'm aware of. And, I mean, the whole thing doesn't even make sense. Neither one of those teams is playing for anything. Baltimore, obviously, out of the playoff picture. Toronto has locked up home field advantage for the wild card round where they'll face the Mariners. Why play 2 games? Why put the risk of having somebody get injured or something like that and ruin things for somebody? Just looking at some of the other games on the schedule, of course, all these games will start between 4 and 4:20. You got the Cardinals at the Pirates. The Pirates, hit the 100 loss mark yesterday. You got the Royals and the Guardians. You got the Tigers and the Mariners. You've got the Nationals and the Mets. Atlanta clinched the NL East yesterday by beating the Marlins 2-1. Kind of making that doubleheader sweep by the Mets pointless. You have to feel bad for the Mets. It's kind of like the Dodgers last year. The Mets have won 100 games and will be a wild card, just like the Dodgers won 106 last year, but the Giants won 107 to win the NL West crown. And yet the Mets were comfortably ahead most of the season, let the division slip away, and now find themselves with a rough road because they'll have to deal with San Diego in the opening round of the playoffs. And then, then they'll have to move on and play the Dodgers should they get through round 1. That's a very rough road to go to try to win the NL pennant. So it's going to be interesting. Well, Nathan, you wouldn't have been able to fade Mitch White. He just came in. Like I said, they started Richards and they've thrown a bunch of guys for 1 inning apiece. I'll be interested to see if White will get more than an inning. Because I guess this will be his second inning since they're actually letting him come out for the 6th. But Richards went 1, Simber went 1, Garcia went 1. They threw Romano, the closer, in the 4th inning because that makes perfect sense. I don't know if they're trying to go reverse and, instead of going to the bullpen and late, they're going to have Mitch White throw 4 or 5 innings here. But I hate these kind of games because you're trying to guess as to how long somebody's going to be in a game or how many at-bats somebody's going to get before they get yanked for somebody else. It's kind of this is basically no different than watching preseason football because it's like, how many snaps is this guy going to get before we pull out and go to the backup guys and everything else? Yeah, exactly. That's a good point about the Dodgers is Kershaw. I don't think he's going to go very long. I think, they don't really care. They didn't care yesterday. They've lost 2 straight to the Rockies. I don't think they really care about this game. They want to make sure they get to the postseason healthy. The only guy I see that might stick around is you might see Freeman stick in there because he's trying to chase down the batting title, but he's well behind McNeil. But other than that, who knows? You might see Mookie Betts for an at-bat, and then you might see whoever else are going to stick in there. DE, like I said, I like UCF giving the points. I like that it went down to 2.5. It was 3 last night. And by the same token, I think that I have to lean towards the under. I just think 63.5 is probably a couple points too high. I think they'll probably get to about 60. Like I said, SMU gets all these inflated totals, and then they don't get to them. And this is granted, this is the lowest total that they've had all season. But you look at UCF, and they've gone under in their last 3 games. The total was 62 against Louisville. They finished at 34. It was 62 against Florida Atlantic. They finished at 54. And it was 56.5 against Georgia Tech. And they finished at 37. The only game they went over was against South Carolina State, and that was a total of 58, and they got to 66. Both teams have stayed under in 3 of their 4 games on the year. And let's face it, the game that SMU went over against TCU was mainly because of the fact that neither team played any defense. And we had 3 touchdowns in that game in the last 5 minutes. And that's what pushed it over. Because it was 35-21 with 8 minutes to go before SMU scored with 5:14 to go. Then TCU scored with 2.5 minutes to go. And then SMU scored again with 1:04 to play to push it over the number. I don't think we're going to see that kind of offensive bonanza late to push this game to where everybody wants it to see. Yeah, it did drop down to 62. It was 62, 62 and a half this morning, and then it went back up. I think that it's probably going to end up around 60. I think it's going to be something like 31 or 34, 24, something like that, where we don't quite get to 63 and a half. UCF is going to run the ball repeatedly. And that's what makes them dangerous. They can run the ball, but Plumlee does have 2 games where he's thrown for at least 300 yards this season. Geo said he cashed with the Braves on the money line, the Mets on the run line in game 2, and the Nerfy with the Brewers and the Diamondbacks. The Gale and Lauer game was low scoring all the way. I don't know if we're going to see a whole lot of runs today either with if Kelly pitches the way he should as opposed to how he pitched against the Giants last week. And then Burns going for the Brewers. That's a heck of a teaser. +3 and under 70. But I think UCF wins outright, so I don't think you need any points. I'm not sold on SMU's defense. I'm definitely not sold on SMU's run game. I just think that UCF is the better team. We've watched SMU lose back-to-back games where they've been gouged by the run. You look against Maryland, SMU gave up 227 yards on the ground last week. Well, not last week, but, in their last game, TCU got 191 on 35 carries. So that talking about almost 5.5 yards a carry there. And Max Duggan threw for 278. And if you throw Duggan's 10 carries for a negative 11 yards out, they had run 23 times for 206 yards before that. You look at UCF's numbers on the ground this season, they've run for 292 against South Carolina State. They had 208 against Louisville. They had 314 against Florida Atlantic on the ground in a game that they also threw for 339 yards. And they had 284 against Georgia Tech. When you're pounding out, 250, 260 yards a game on the ground, it's going to make it tough for a team to defend, especially if you can throw. And like we said, Plumlee's been good throwing the ball when necessary. He's got 300-yard games. Didn't throw much against Georgia Tech. Didn't need to throw much against Georgia Tech. But you look here, Plumlee leads the team in rushing with 390 yards. Bowser has 237. Richardson has 218. Harvey has 123. O'Keefe has 95 on 6 carries. They'll run the ball and they'll just shuffle guys in and out, and they'll just make life miserable for SMU. Let's see. Was there anything else we should talk about yesterday? We talked about Judge hitting his 60-second homer. So I guess that means nobody will have to worry about anybody cutting into anything else on ESPN tonight. Like I said, Judge isn't playing today. Cole Beasley, former receiver for the Cowboys and the Bills, and who spent, the last couple of weeks with the Tampa Bay Bucks, announced this afternoon that he is retiring effective immediately after 11 seasons in the league. Beasley had a productive career. He kind of got himself in hot water last year with the whole his whole stance on COVID and everything else. Finished this year with 4 catches and 17 yards in his 2 games against Tampa Bay, or with Tampa Bay, I should say. Finishes his career with 554 catches for 5,726 yards and 34 touchdowns. Speaking of retirements, Blake Bortles announced he has quietly retired. So his career is over at this point. And for those of you worried about tomorrow's Thursday night game, Jonathan Taylor has been ruled out by the Colts, taking a big player out of their offense, which has been, let's face it, it's been miserable so far this season. So you're going to see a lot of Nyheim Hines and Deion Jackson, and Philip Lindsay might get called up from the practice squad. Of course, then he could face his former team as well. Of course, Shaq Leonard is also out for the Colts. So is Tyquan Lewis and Julian Blackmon. So the Colts, they struggled last week against Tennessee. They'll be coming in off a short week, facing a Denver team that's still trying to find their way too with Russell Wilson. But you have to wonder, when is the quarterback carousel going to stop for the Colts where they actually get somebody that's capable? Because you've seen, since Andrew Luck retired, we've seen Brissett, we've seen Rivers, we've seen Wentz. Now we have Matt Ryan, and you just keep going downhill as far as the talent level and whether these guys are the level of washed upness for these guys. At this point, the next guy on the list, the way the chart's falling, you'd have to think they'd go find Vinny Testaverde or Brett Favre and bring them in out of retirement, because the production has gone way downhill. Ryan has done nothing for for Indianapolis. And it's putting Frank Reich in a difficult situation because you don't have a quarterback that you can rely on to do anything. Gio saying for tomorrow's game, the Broncos -2.5 or 3, under 45.5, and Mo Alley Cox over 20.5 yards receiving. Yeah, well, somebody's got to catch the ball for the Colts. Apparently, they don't want to throw it to Pittman or Pierce with any kind of regularity. And Cox had a pretty good game last week against the Titans. Seeing that they were throwing the ball to the tight ends a lot, Jelani Woods had made some plays as well. Just taking a look here at the Colts numbers. Last week, Cox had 6 for 85 and 2 touchdowns. Granson had 4 for 62. I'm pretty sure he's another big body guy that plays tight end. He's got the size to kind of be a receiver at 6'2", but he weighs 240, so I guess you'd be talking like a Kelvin Benjamin type. But Pierce had 4 for 80. Campbell had 4 for 43. Pittman only had 3 catches for 31 yards. And that's not really going to work because you're talking about, this is your number one receiver and you're throwing the ball to the tight end. Taking a look at the season stats here. If they want to give them to me, here we go. And you're looking, Pittman leads the team with 20 catches, but he's only got 224 yards. His longest catch is 28. Pierce has 7 catches for 141. Mo Alley Cox, 10 for 129. Ashton Doolin has 11 for 150. Granson has 11 for 105. Hines has 17 catches for 113. I think he's going to be very involved in the passing game tomorrow as well, because they're going to have to check down to someone. And Hines is a very effective pass catcher out of the backfield. He's not all that great when it comes to running the ball. He's got 8 carries for 11 yards on the year. Jackson has 2 carries for -3. And those are the 2 guys that are running backs who have touched the ball so far this season in a run play. Ryan has 12 yards, and Doolin had 1 carry for 3. They're going to have to do something. As far as Denver goes, I agree. I think Denver's the better team. They've got a better quarterback at this point. How Denver replaces Javonte Williams, whether it's more of Melvin Gordon, who nobody wants to see because he fumbles the ball too often, or if we see Mike Boone get more carries, that would be a plus as well. But Denver obviously going to have to find a way to replace the production of Javonte Williams. Andrew talking about soccer, I will fully admit that's out of my field of expertise. I know, we have the soccer genius, Sean Miller. He's on it now. I think he's on it at 11 a.m. He's still on the Max Wagers Network right before Higgsy is on Midday Money at noon. I know he knows a lot about soccer. And real quick here, we'll just do our housekeeping stuff before we get into what's left of today's card. By the way, in case you were wondering, the Orioles scored twice in the 6th on an Austin Hayes 2-run double off the aforementioned Mitch White. So it's now 4-2 in the 7th. Gillespie coming in to replace Keegan Aiken. Raimel Tapia is on first for the Blue Jays. And Vlad Guerrero Jr. coming up to the plate in that contest. Back to the housekeeping, though. Of course, our sponsor is Caesars. Caesars Sportsbook has a great deal for first-time users. You can get up to $1,250 in free bet insurance. What that means is you fund your first bet if you place it, and that bet loses. Caesars will make it right up to $1,250 so you can make another bet. Make any more of your own money. Download the app today. Always check your state's age limits. As we always say, bet responsibly, because it's not our fault if you bet your entire life savings on the Colts tomorrow, for example. And don't forget that if the picks that we talk about on the show aren't enough to satisfy your need for sports betting knowledge, you can get my premium bets every day by clicking the link in the show box below. You can also check out Picks and Parlays at the Winners and Winers websites and YouTube channels for free picks all day. Of course, our good buddy and former co-host and once in a while guest Scott Reichel, of course, does his picks on the Winners and Winers channel. So does Scott Steen and all of your other favorite betting analysts. And finally, of course, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you'll never miss when the show is on. Of course, if you've been here more than once, you know that we're on at 2 p.m. Eastern, Monday to Friday. Also, one last thing. Don't forget, tomorrow sometime, I don't know the exact time that it drops, will be the Week 5 edition of Once Upon a Time in Las Vegas, the rise and fall of the greatest sports betting show in history, or whatever the 37-word title is for that show, with Steen and Rocky 4A. Don't call him Rocky 4. Special guest this week will be myself and the aforementioned Scott Reichel, bringing you the inside information on this week's upcoming games. No, Ryan, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Reichel, when we moved from the Max Wagers Network over to here, they decided that they wanted to see improved viewership and stuff like that to justify having 2 people on the show. Reichel drops in usually on Fridays because he's getting ready to do the college football show with Steen afterwards. It's difficult for me, too, because I'm not used to having to sit here and talk for the whole hour. But hopefully, if things work out, we'll be able to get somebody, either him or Jim or Steen or, player to be named later, back in here as well. But yeah, that wasn't a decision that was made by myself or Reichel. We enjoyed what we were doing. Feel free to, somebody, Jeffrey Mayer, who I haven't seen since, said he was going to go picket in front of company headquarters. I don't know if that ever panned out. Maybe he got arrested. That's why he hasn't been in the comment section. But I agree. It's easier too with two people because you have somebody to bounce off of instead of me just talking to the wall. But not a whole lot I can do about that situation. So we will move on to the rest of today's card. Like I said, take note, it's not the easiest thing to do to try to figure out who's going to play and who's not. So, as always, be careful with how you do these. Always double check to see if somebody's going to be in or out of the lineup. I double checked. Everybody that I punched in here was actually showing up as being in the starting lineups according to the announced starting lineups by MLB as of this afternoon. Hopefully they haven't changed anybody out. I'm just going to double check real quick before I pull these up. Because there were a couple teams that hadn't put up lineups yet, so I avoided them entirely. The Cardinals still don't have a lineup up. And it looks like, they're the only team that doesn't have a lineup posted at this time. The Braves have now posted a lineup. You won't see Acuna Jr. in the lineup, but they have Dansby Swanson in there. Olsen is in there. Ozuna. So they've got some of their regulars in the mix, at least to start. Let's see. Just making sure I didn't miss anybody else. We said Cleveland's got their starters in there. Okay, the Mets are not playing Pete Alonso today. Lindor is in the lineup. Looks like McNeil is not in the lineup for them. And let's see. Anybody else that's worth talking about? No Corey Seager for Texas. I think I mentioned that earlier. And we don't have a lineup for the second game of the doubleheader for Toronto and Baltimore, but that makes sense since they're still playing right now. All right. Yeah, I haven't been able to watch the Reichel and Steen football show because I usually, after I do the show, I end up writing a bunch of games for Saturday. So I usually come back and watch it after it's been on. But yeah, Steen and Reichel, both good guys. They've both been on this show before. At some point, I'm sure they'll drop in again. I've seen Steen in the comments a bunch of times. He knows it's an open door to pop in. Same with Jim. Same with Reichel. But yeah, they're all good guys. And like I said, it works a lot easier when you have somebody else to talk to and to fill in gaps. But with that said, we will talk about two for the money today. And we're going to start with the aforementioned UCF Knights over SMU. Like we talked about, UCF has a good balanced offense. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. SMU, good at throwing the ball, not so great at running the ball. Can't stop the run. Giving up 180.8 yards per game on the ground, I think it is, so far this season. They struggle on the road. They struggle against decent offenses. We saw them struggle against Maryland. We saw them struggle against TCU. I like the Knights in this one. I think they should win. Probably by a touchdown. I just don't trust SMU. I like Tanner Mordecai as a quarterback, but he's prone to turning the ball over, and that's been an issue for SMU too. Turned the ball over a bunch of times already this season. and they're not. This isn't a team you want to give a short field to in UCF, especially at home. The Yankees over the Rangers, like I said, you're not going to see Judge, Rizzo, and Donaldson, and those guys are in the lineup. I don't think Gleyber Torres is. Let me just scroll down and double check. No, Torres is not. They've got Peraza playing short. Oswaldo Cabrera is playing in left. Trevino is DHing. Higgy is catching. But, I mean, let's face it, we're talking about a Texas team that isn't very good. They'll have Semien and they'll have Lowe and they'll have Garcia at the top of the lineup. But after that, it kind of tapers off. One kid that I do like from the Rangers is Bubba Thompson. Rachel and I talked about him a few times before, and we think that Bubba Thompson could be the stolen base leader in the AL next year if he comes up with the big league club right from Jump Street. Because you take a look at what Bubba Thompson has done in the majors this season, and you figure he's only played in he's played in 54 games. He swiped 18 bags, so if you translate that out over 162, he'd go over the 50 steal mark. And that's just being, the fact that he hasn't had the green light as much. If you look down at what he was doing in AAA at Round Rock in 80 games this season, he hit 304, 12 doubles, 4 triples, 13 home runs, 48 RBIs, but he stole 49 bases out of 52 attempts in 80 games. I mean, you extrapolate that over a full year and you're pushing the triple-digit mark, and we haven't seen that in an eternity back since the days of, Ricky Henderson and Vince Coleman and all those guys. I don't know if Thompson would get to 100 steals in the majors, but I'm sure he can get to 50 or 60 at least, if not more. As long as he can get on base. One thing he's got to do is cut down on strikeouts. He's walked just 7 times while striking out 56 and 167 at-bats in the majors. But he's still got a 258 average, so he's better than Billy Hamilton. Spencer Watkins is going in Game 2 for the Orioles. The Blue Jays don't have a starter. Neither team has a lineup set. With Otto, you have to go with him early because second and third time around the order he gets smacked around, and his issue too is his control. He's got to be better about throwing strikes as opposed to issuing free passes. 60 walks and 129 2/3 isn't going to get it done. That's how he hurts himself. It unravels because of that. Just trying to see if I can pull up information on Otto here. Let's see. Yeah, Otto in the first inning, he's given up 8 earned runs in 26 starts, so a 277 earned run average. Opponents hit 202. In the second inning, his ERA jumps to 4.85. In the third inning, it's 4.68. The fourth inning, it's 5.55, and the fifth inning, it's 7.78. So with Otto, ride him early, but don't expect him to keep it up. Why is sharp money on SMU? I think people think that SMU is going to bounce back from their last 2 losses. They're probably banking on the fact that the extra rest might help the Mustangs. I just look at the fact that, like I said, they've struggled to stop the run. They've struggled to play defense at all the last couple of weeks. I mean, you've given up 76 points to Maryland and TCU. And they struggle playing at UCF. UCF, I think, has won the last 5 meetings overall between these teams. SMU 0-4-1 in the last 5 at Central Florida against the spread. I just don't trust them. The The Guardians, it's Savale and Heasley. Like I said, Cleveland's at least starting the game with their regular lineup. Savale pitched well against the Royals in his last start. He's won 2 starts in a row, which is something to write home about for him because he's only got 4 wins all year. And Kansas City, everybody's planning on having the We Fired Mike Matheny party tomorrow afternoon at Kauffman Stadium. Good seats still available. I'm sure Steen will be there at the parade because the Royals have not had a lot of success this season. And with the Angels and the A's, I'm going with the first 5. You look at the full game number, and it's minus 2. What was it? 240. Looks like it's come down a little bit, but I mean, you're still looking at the full game line being somewhere between 225 and 240 in that range. Meanwhile, you can get the first 5 run line at minus 135, and it's Ohtani versus Ken Waldichuk, and we know Waldichuk has struggled in the first part of this season, well, his rookie season, basically, after he came up from the Yankees, or came over from the Yankees, I should say, in the Montas trade. I don't trust the bullpen for the Angels, which is why I'm a little leery about the full game line in that one. But Ohtani, he's coming off a very solid performance against the A's in his last start, took a no-hitter into the 8th, and ended up leaving after 8 innings with giving up 2 hits, no runs, in a game that they ended up winning 4-2 because the bullpen, there it was again, the bullpen coming in to screw things up, gave a couple of runs in the 9th, made it a closer game than it needed to be. But I think that the Ohtani should keep the A's in check, and they should be able to put up a couple of runs on Waldichuk. They have the lead after 5. That takes us to the 4 for the show segment. Like I said, I'm going to ride with this and you and UCF staying under 63.5, like DE mentioned. It went down to 62 or 62.5, and now it's bounced back up. I think they're probably going to get to about 60. I just don't know if we're going to get to 64. Basically. It's tough to try and handicap where that's going to end up, but based on the fact that each team has stayed under in 3 out of 4 games, I'm going to look for that to stay under the number. Yeah, like Andrew said, 9 touchdowns. I mean, could they get there? Sure. Will they get there? Not necessarily. And, it could be one of those games where we see a lot of trying to play field position early in the game to try and make the other team go long ways down the field. I'm not sold that SMU can stop anybody, but I know Central Florida is solid defensively. They defend the pass well, and they're going to make life tough for Mordecai. If they can take Rashi Rice out of the mix, or at least neutralize him to some extent, it's going to be that much tougher for SMU to move the ball, much less put points on the board. The White Sox and the Twins, like we said, the White Sox won't have Jimenez or Abreu in the lineup, so their lineup looks like, let's see, who do they have? Just pulling up my list here. White Sox are starting Elvis Andrus, then Moncada, then Vaughn, then Sheets, then Harrison, Mark Payton in left, Romy Gonzalez, Adam Engel, and Carlos Perez. The Twins are going with Arias, Ursula, Gordon, Gary Sanchez, Jake Cave, Celestino, Wallner, Palacios, and Hamilton. So no Correa or anybody else there either. Pitching matchup, Louis Varland, who has as many wins in the majors as you, against Davis Martin, who at least has 3 wins. the White Sox, they'll at least finish at 500. Still disappointing considering what their win total was in the preseason. But considering how poorly they played for long stretches of the year, they might consider that a moral victory. Be interesting to see who gets the managerial job there next season now that La Russa has stepped down with a year left on his contract. The Mariners over the Tigers. I don't know what was stranger, the fact that the Mariners threw their backup catcher in the game yesterday, or that the backup catcher actually was throwing in the mid 80s. And it just shows that they didn't want to run the risk of getting somebody injured that could be a valuable pitcher probably after the Sam Haggerty groin injury on Monday night. But, Torrens, you look at how he pitched, sure, he gave him a run in the 10th because of the stupid ghost runner. But, he was throwing some good pitches. He was clocked at 85 on the ball that Baddoo hit to fly out for the first inning, or the first out of the inning. Then it was 85 on the ball that Green hit for the sacrifice fly. He got up to 88 on a ball that Javier Baez hit. So, pretty good when you get a backup catcher out there that can throw faster than, some of these guys that are starting in the majors. But hey, good for him. He got a victory. First position player in Seattle Mariners franchise history to get a win on the mound. So kudos to him. Marco Gonzalez going in that one against Tyler Alexander. I'm more confident probably in the Angels' first five because I don't trust the Angels' bullpen. Nathan, we saw that the other night where they were up, 4-0 or something like that against the A's on Monday, and then proceeded to give up runs in the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th to lose 5-4. I think Ohtani should keep the A's in check through 5. And with Ohtani and Trout and Ward and those guys in the lineup, they should be able to get the Waldichuk. So I think that they'll be up after 5. I've watched the Angels bullpen puke up so many leads this year. It's nauseating. And the Red Sox over the Rays. The Rays are throwing Josh Fleming with his 623 earned run average. I know Rachel and I have talked a lot about how streaky Pivetta is. We talk about how he's been up and down. But let's face it, this Rays team has basically, punted this series because they want to make sure they're in good shape for the first round of the playoffs, which starts Friday. The Rays have announced that Shane McClanahan will start against Shane Bieber in Game 1 of that series. So something to watch out for there. But in this one, I'm going to go with the Red Sox. They've won the first 2 in this set. They won 6-0 yesterday. I'm disappointed that Springs only threw 4 innings or whatever before they took him out. And then Poche came in and gave up a grand slam to blow that game open. But that's the way things roll this time of year. Unfortunately, you're basically playing how long is this guy going to be in the game and go from there. And with that said, that takes us to the shot in the dark, which, of course, like we said, we're basically improvising because we don't know how long any of these guys are going to be in there. Devers over 1.5 total bases. He's been pretty good this season. Hasn't had the big numbers of late, but against Fleming and then Tampa Bay's endless parade of relievers, why not? Freddie Freeman, like I said, he's trying to chase Jeff McNeil. I think he's going to give it his best go facing off against the Rockies, and it's Austin Gomber. At least it's Austin Gomber to start the game. Who knows how long he'll go. Just going to take a quick look at his numbers here. Gomber, of course, 5-7 with a 5.62 earned run average on the year. Freeman in his career 2 for 5 off of Gomber. So there is that going for him. Other guys that have had success, Justin Turner is 6 of 7 against Gomber in his career. 3 doubles and a homer and 3 walks. Now they have an on-base percentage of 900 against a guy. Bregman over 1.5 total bases. He's going to be in the lineup to start. It's Ranger Suarez versus Framber Valdez. I don't know how long he'll be in there, but at plus 145, he's worth a look. Jake Fraley for the Reds. Reichel said he's the only guy he likes on Cincinnati's team right now. And when you look at their lineup, it makes sense. I'm going to go with the Cubs over the Reds in the finale here. I'll send the Reds to 100 losses. It's Sampson against Ashcraft. Sampson has pitched well over the last 6 or 7 starts. And I'm just going to take a look at what his numbers are in that stretch. He hasn't been bad for a guy that, has been a journeyman and bounced around 4 and 5 on the year with a 310 earned run average. But you look here of late, he threw 7 innings. He had 1 run on 3 hits against the Reds on Friday, walked 2, struck out 6. In the month of September, Sampson made 6 starts. He was 3-1, an ERA of 1.5, 9 walks, 20 strikeouts, a whip under 1 in 36 innings of work. Opponents had a 210 batting average against him in that stretch. He gave up more than 1 run just once. That came in the first start of September when he gave up 2 runs in 5 innings to the Cardinals. He made 2 starts against Cincinnati in the month of September. 6 innings, 1 run, 5 hits, no walks, and a strikeout on September 8th. 1 run, like I said, 1 run, 3 hits, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts over 7 on September 30th. He also beat the Mets in that stretch with 6 shutout innings, pitched 6 innings and 1 run ball against the Marlins, 6 innings and 1 run ball against the Pirates. He's won 3 of his last 4 starts. Ashcraft, I haven't hasn't looked good, I should say. And now we get to the strikeout props where we just hope that these guys stick around long enough. Ohtani, I think, will. Like I said, he mowed down the A's in his last start. Over 7.5 is plus 158. If you go the alternative, over 8.5, plus 300. Valdez over 5.5 is 154. Over 6.5 is plus 320. Herman, you never know how long he's going to go because you have to wonder, is he going to pitch well? Is he going to get smacked around? Over 5.5 plus 210. Over 6.5 plus 430, and that's a huge number. Merrill Kelly over 5.5 plus 128. Over 6.5 plus 280. I was going to put Burns on here, but I don't trust Burns because most of the time lately he's ended up coming in under the number. And I think in order to get to plus money for him today, let me just double check. I think on FanDuel, on his strikeout props, you didn't get to plus money until you got to 9. Just going to pull it up here real quick. Where'd it go? Alt strikeouts. There we go. Burns at okay. Now they moved it down to if he gets over 7.5, it's plus 122. Over 8.5 is plus 230. Earlier it was over. You had to get to over 8.5 to get the plus money. So they've moved it down a little bit accordingly. I still don't trust him. And Nick Pivetta over 5.5 strikeouts plus 134, over 6.5 plus 280. Pivetta will still strike guys out, and Tampa Bay is more than willing to create their share of the wind energy movement. So after seeing the way that Tampa Bay's played the last couple of days, I wouldn't be afraid to chase that. If you bet on all these and they all cashed out, on $100, you could turn that into just under $550,000. If you bet the run line in the Cubs-Reds game, in addition to all the others, could cash out just under $720 large on $100. And if you just went with the alternative K props for Otani, Valdez, Herman, Kelly, and Pavetta, and they were to come through $128,473.76 on $100. For tomorrow, like we said, there's one game. It's the Thursday night game for the NFL. That's it. We can talk preseason basketball if you guys want. We can talk about the NHL because that starts Friday with the games in Prague between the Predators and the Sharks. We can look forward to the games over the weekend if you want. Basically, bring your questions, bring your thought processes, and we can kick around stuff as we look forward to. We can even, if you want, we can look forward to the wild card games on Friday. Taking a look to see who the pitching matchups have been announced for those at this point. Let me see. Like I said, I know it's supposed to be McClanahan and Bieber. That game will be underway Friday by the time we get on the air because I believe that game starts at 1:05. Take a look here and see what else we've got slated for there. Okay. Zach Wheeler will start for the Phillies. The Cardinals have yet to name who's going to start in game one. I'm going to guess it's going to be Wainwright. But we'll have to see. That game will start right after we go on the air because it starts at 2:07. The Mariners and the Blue Jays start at 4:07. That will be Castillo and Manoah. And the 8:07 game for Friday will be the Padres and the Mets from Citi Field. Starters have not yet been announced. If I had to guess, I would say it'll probably be Yu Darvish going against probably DeGrom since they're not going to throw him today. If the division title was still at stake, the Mets would have gone with DeGrom in this contest. But since that's no longer a factor, Trevor Williams getting the start for the Mets today against Eric Fetty. So I imagine it'll be Darvish and DeGrom on Friday afternoon or Friday evening at Citi Field. But that wraps up the show for today. We'll be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern, where barring some unforeseen circumstance, it'll still be just me, unless somebody drops in that I'm unaware of. Maybe I'll reach out and see if Jim or Steen or Rachel are busy. But for Just Parlays and the Winners and Winers Network, I'm Chris King. Enjoy the rest of your day. Good luck with your bets. We'll see you tomorrow where we talk about more exciting sports action to get you prepared to head back to the window to pick up a pile of cash. So long.